What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back for another Game of Thrones Season 8 Endgame Theory video. Before I get into the topic, I just want to say the next giveaway winner has been randomly selected, and I will announce your name at the end of this video. There are still several seasons of the Game of Thrones series left that I am giving away, so make sure you enter if you want a chance to win. That link will be down in the description. Now let's get started. In today's video, I want to go over some of the biggest theories that are still remaining that have yet to be confirmed or denied. With only 6 episodes left, there isn't a whole lot of time for any filler during the final episodes, and according to most of the cast members, they are saying each episode in Season 8 will be monumental. So I'm kind of expecting a grand finale type season. All 6 remaining episodes will most likely be pretty damn epic, mixed in with some heartbreak because I do think we will lose over 50% of the characters during those last few episodes. The reason why I want to talk about all of this is because there are still some really good theories out there that have not been resolved one way or the other. The weird thing about some of these theories are no one really knows the origin of them. Everyone has heard of them, but no one really knows who created them, and I want your opinion on how you think Season 8 will end. And I'm not just talking about the Season 8 finale either, but what I mean is how the show and some of the character story arcs will end in general, kind of like Clegane Bowl. This is a theory that has been around for years, and depending on the outcome, it could seal the fate of one of, or maybe even both, really big and popular characters like the Hound and the Mountain. The hype around this theory really started to pick up during Season 6 when the Hound came back into the story after he was on the verge of death after getting his ass kicked by Brienne. The Hound came back and Cersei was on trial, and a lot of people assumed Cersei would go with a trial by combat and use the Mountain as her champion, and then somehow the Hound would end up being the champion for the Faith, but it never happened. And Cersei decided to go with her own grand finale instead. But then in Season 7, the hype started to rumble again during the meeting at the Dragon Pit because the Hound finally confronted his brother, and he basically told him that he knew his Judgment Day was coming. But does this mean we're going to get Clegane Bowl in Season 8? No, it does not, but it is still on the table. The Hound is on his way north where it will basically be ground zero for the Great War, and there is no guarantee the Hound will survive any battle against the dead in the north. While the Mountain is still chilling in King's Landing with Cersei, who has no intentions of coming north to help them in any way. In fact, she has more reinforcements coming to help secure her position as the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. So do you think there is still enough room in the story for them to give us Clegane Bowl? Some people say all Dan and Dave do these days is give us fan service, so if that's the case, then we will most likely see all of the popular theories come to fruition. But I don't think they're going to do that and give us everything we have all wanted. But on the other hand, that doesn't mean we won't get Clegane Bowl either. In terms of the overall story, I don't think the Hound and the Mountain are very important characters. I don't think their stories need to end in some epic fashion, but of course I would always recommend it. But regardless, this is one of the most popular theories out there. The same thing kinda goes for the Valonqar Prophecy as well. Millions of people believe this prophecy will still come true, even in the television show where they chose to leave this portion of the prophecy out. Do any of you still believe this is how Cersei's story will end in the Game of Thrones? First, you have to decide who you think the Valonqar is, because that is still up for debate for most people. Some say Jaime Lannister is the Valonqar, while others say Tyrion. But then there are people who believe the Valonqar is Arya Stark, or even Euron Greyjoy. As of right now, none of these characters are really in position to kill Cersei. Jaime does have the best opportunity as of right now because he is still right outside of the city, but Tyrion is on a ship heading north, Euron is on a ship heading to Essos, and Arya is in Winterfell, which is about to be under attack very soon. So unless Cersei marches north with the Lannister troops and the Golden Company, that means everyone else is going to have to defeat the Night King and his army first, then come back down to King's Landing to finish off Cersei and her army. There are reports that say each episode in Season 8 will be around 90 minutes long, and if that's the case, then there is certainly enough time to engage in several battles or wars across the entire continent. Especially when most of the storylines are going to all be taking place in the same place. We're not going to have to bounce around to 10 different locations to check in on each character. Most of them will all be together now, which leaves more time to do other things. Cersei is one of the most important characters in this show, and she is arguably the best actor on the show, so the way her story ends is going to be very important in terms of the entire series being looked at as a whole. If Cersei just dies in some random way, I think it would really affect the legacy of her character, I should say. I am still in the camp that believes Cersei will have a very personal death. I think she will be killed by someone who is very close to her, most likely Jaime in the show. But I could also see Cersei surviving the series being part of the bittersweet ending as well. Everyone has been waiting and wanting her to die, but I wouldn't be surprised if she somehow pulled through and made it through the winter. She has proven herself to be extremely resilient. But then you have these theories that more recently became very popular, like Bran Stark being the Night King. Once again, I think the Night King is one of the more important characters in this series as well. Even though we barely know anything about him, the entire series has been building towards this inevitable war against the Night King. And the way they end this part of the story is also very important to the entire show's legacy. If they screw this up, it can hurt the entire show. That's when you have to ask yourself, honestly, would they really end the series with Bran Stark being the Night King? How would that affect the way we look at all of the events that have taken place? Would that be the best way to tell his story, by him being the ultimate bad guy, quote unquote, the entire time? If you're not very familiar with this theory, then you should go and watch Game of Theory's video about the true identity of the Night King. In my opinion, he made the best video about this theory. I think he presented some of the most believable evidence in my opinion. Shortly after he made his video, everyone else started to jump on this theory and it became kind of annoying, but I think Nex's video was really well done. There is definitely enough evidence to support the theory, but like most theories, there is also evidence that supports otherwise. The way that I have seen this theory presented does seem like an interesting way to cap off the story of two characters at the same time, but I'm not so sure the show is going to go in this direction. I am 100% confident Bran will play a huge role in defeating the Night King, but I'm not personally confident in saying Bran is the Night King, although I do like the theory. There are also many theories surrounding how the Night King is going to be defeated and where this final battle is going to take place. I think this is one of the most important aspects of how the story is going to end. This show was built on the politics and relationships between all the main players, but there was always that underlying threat, which was the biggest threat beyond the wall. It just kind of loomed over everything without ever having to be at the forefront of the story, but it was always going to be one of the biggest parts of the story in the end. My personal belief is we will see a few smaller battles in the far north, mostly just the Night King and his army destroying a few towns, but ultimately I think the battle and the Night King will end in Winterfell. I think that's why a Stark must always remain in Winterfell, and I think that's why they always said winter was coming, and that's why that particular castle is called Winterfell itself. That's where the King of Winter will fall, like he did before many years ago. I believe it's all connected. The very first scene of this series was Beyond the Wall, where we got our first look at the others. Then the very next scene was in Winterfell with the Starks. I believe that's how it will ultimately end, with the others falling in Winterfell, but this is just my opinion. There are other theories out there that have some interesting evidence as well, which state the Night King will make it much further south than Winterfell. Some of this stems around the scene during Dany's vision at the House of the Undying, when she is standing in the Great Hall with the roof completely destroyed and the Iron Throne covered in snow. Now obviously that could be seen as a metaphor, but personally I do believe this was a scene of the future. It is finally snowing in King's Landing, which we all saw at the end of Season 7 when Jaime Lannister was riding north, so you can only imagine how much more snow will be in King's Landing by the end of the Season 8. I think Daenerys might actually be the one who burns the Great Hall herself when the final war against Cersei happens, but who really knows? Bran Stark also had a vision of a dragon flying over the rooftops of King's Landing, and some believe this might be the Night King riding on Viserion, and he will be the one to destroy the Great Hall. But if you look at the rooftops in this vision, there isn't any snow on the roofs and it's still very sunny out, so I highly doubt this is Bran seeing the Night King flying over King's Landing. I do not believe that is how Game of Thrones is going to end, with the Night King making it that far south. I know some say there won't even be a huge war in the end, but there's actually going to be another pact that takes place where things will end with another type of peace treaty between the humans and the Inhumans. But I just don't see it ending that way in the show. I don't think HBO hired Miguel Sapochnik to direct several episodes in the final season for it to end without a huge war. I think he's going to produce an absolute bloodbath. But what makes the most sense to you? Where do you see the final war against the Night King taking place? Are you among the camp who believe he will make it through the north and all the way down to King's Landing, or the God's Eye? Or do you think he makes it even further south than that? Are any of you willing to double down and say the Night King wins in the end and everybody else dies? I know one of the most popular sayings is all men must die, but do you really believe that will happen? If the ending is supposed to be bittersweet in the TV series, then how could they make an ending with any kind of sweet if every character dies and the Night King lives? I just don't see that happening, but I want to talk about Jon and Daenerys too, because I think the way their stories end are ultimately the most important. These are the two characters that we have followed from day one, and now that they have not only risen to the top, but now their stories are intertwined in every aspect. They have always been the key to how it was going to end, and I think just like with Cersei and the Night King, if you screw up the ending of these storylines, it can hurt the entire legacy of this series. Just keep in mind, these are my opinions because I'm sure there are people who hate Cersei and Jon and Daenerys and don't give two shits about how their stories end. But I don't see how you couldn't when you know the show is going to hinge on what happens with them. The big theory that revolves around Jon and Daenerys both is the prince or princess who was promised. If you're a fan of this show or story, then you must have heard about this now. And what makes it an interesting theory is how many characters actually fit the description. I have actually seen theories that say Davos is the one, and guess what, the evidence actually makes sense, although I don't believe it's true, but it kind of amazes me how one thing can fit with so many different people, just like the Valonqar theory. Even if you don't believe in this theory at all, then I'm sure you can agree that one of these characters will be looked at as the bigger hero than the other, or the one who sacrificed the most for the people when it's all said and done. The only problem is there will always be a bias when it comes to these things. If you're a fan of one character more than the other, then you will usually say, well, my favorite did more good than your favorite, and so on and so forth. I have always believed that someone will have to sacrifice themselves in order to defeat the Night King, and I'm certainly not the only one. I'm sure many of us believe this, and Jon seems to be one of the more likely candidates to step up and do this, considering he has shown that he is willing to sacrifice himself if he needs to. Most of you already know my stance on a lot of this stuff, considering I have made videos on so many different things. Unless you're new here, then you should go back and check my catalog of videos. But there are just so many theories out there that have yet to be resolved. There is a theory that says Arya Stark will wear Jaime Lannister's face to kill Cersei, and there's a theory that says Samuel Tarly is actually writing the entire story. And in the end, he's actually going to be reading the story to baby Sam, who I am assuming would be much older by then, but you get my point. Which theories do you like and believe will come to pass before this series ends? Which theories that are out there do you think can actually help tell the ending of this series in a fitting way that the majority of the fans would accept? I know it might be hard to choose and there are so many that I didn't mention, but I just wanted to briefly go over the main characters. The two kings and queens that I think are the most important in terms of finishing this series, but let me know how you think it's going to end down in the comments. I would love to hear what you think, especially if you have something new and refreshing to add. Before I go, I want to remind everyone that starting this Friday, I will be live streaming once a week, every Friday around 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. These live streams will be Patreon exclusives for everyone who supports this channel on Patreon. If you would like to watch and chat with us during the live streams, you can find the link to my Patreon down in the description. But now it's time to announce the next winner of my Game of Thrones series giveaway. There are 7 seasons of Game of Thrones so far, and I'm giving away 1 season to 7 different people. So far, there has only been 3 winners, so there is still plenty of time to enter to get your chance to win a season of Game of Thrones. That link to enter is down in the description also. But today's winner is Casillo Luis. I don't want to read your entire name because I know I'm going to butcher it, so just make sure you look at the screen now to see if that is you from Brazil. Make sure you send me a private YouTube message, or you can send me an email and let me know which season you want. So far, the first 2 winners picked Season 7 and Season 6, so you can have any other season you want. Good luck to everyone else, and thank you all for watching. I really appreciate that, and thank you to all my new Patreon supporters also. All of you have helped me out tremendously, and with your donations, I was able to buy one of the best streaming laptops available, so that really means a lot to me and this channel. Have a great day, everyone. I will see you in the next one. Bye.